Clots of Windsor. We discussed how Falstaff tries to seduce the woman and he was chased away by Mr. Ford. And now we shall discuss what happens next. Now, Mistress Ford suggests Falstaff to wear the clothes of her maid's fat aunt to escape in disguise. He does, and when Mr. Ford arrives, he beats Falstaff and chases him away because he hates the fat aunt. Now, Falstaff is surrounded by disguised children and disguised mistress quickly as a fairy. They burn Falstaff with candles and encircle him and pinch him. Caius is enraged because he married a boy who was in Anne's outfit. The same thing happened with Slender as well. Now, Anne and Fenton were married. Eventually, they all leave together, and Mistress Page even invites Falstaff to come with them. Let's everyone go home and laugh this spot over by a country fire, Sir John and all. Now, Falstaff is a character in two works of Shakespeare, not novels, but works, or rather plays, Henry IV and Merry Wives of Windsor. And Caius is a character in two works of Shakespeare, King Lear and Merry Wives of Windsor. Just remember it, it might be asked. So that is something. Now we come to Troilus and Cressida, written in 1601 or to 1602. Excuse me. Now, it was described by Frederick S. Bowes as one of Shakespeare's problem plays. The play ends on a very bleak note with the death of the noble Trojan Hector and the destruction of the love between Troilus and Cressida. Troilus and Cressida is set during the later years of the Trojan War, faithfully following the plotline of the Iliad from Achilles' refusal to participate in battle to Hector's death. So, all of these plays you can see they all have their origins from old mythological tales. And essentially, two plots are followed in this play. In one, Troilus, a Trojan prince, son of Priam, woos Cressida, another Trojan. They profess their undying love before Cressida is exchanged for a Trojan prisoner of war. As he attempts to visit her in the Greek camp, Troilus glimpses Diomedes flirting with his beloved Cressida and decides to avenge her perfidy. Excuse me, I'm a little sick today. While this plot gives the play its name, it accounts for only a small part of the play's runtime. The majority of the play revolves around the leaders of the Greek and Trojan forces, Agamemnon and Priam, respectively. Agamemnon and his cohorts attempt to get the proud Achilles to return to battle and face Hector, who sends the Greeks a letter telling them of his willingness to engage in one on one combat with a Greek soldier. Now, Ajax is originally chosen as this combatant, but makes peace with Hector before they are able to fight. So, Achilles is prompted to return to battle only after his protege Patroclus is killed by Hector before the Trojan falls. A series of skirmishes conclude the play, during which Achilles catches Hector and has the Myrmidons kill him. The conquest of Troy is left unfinished as the Trojans learn of the death of their hero. So, yeah, that is something. So, you see, a lot of things are happening in this play, and I think this is all that you need to know if you are studying for your competitive exams like NET or SET. And if you wish to read the play, you are very welcome to do that. Now we come to another play, which is called All's Well That Ends Well. A very fitting quote, and a very promptly used quote in contemporary times. All's well that ends well, and it is actually a comedy by Shakespeare, written in around 1604 to 1605, and it is actually considered a problem play of Shakespeare. It is based on Boccaccio's Decameron. It is an important question, it can be asked. Main characters are Helena, a low-born Spanish countess, King of France, Duke of Florence, Bertram, the Countess's son, Diana, daughter of Capulet, an old widow of Florence. So we have quite a lot of characters here. Helena is a character who occurs in another play of Shakespeare, which is A Midsummer Night's Dream. So just remember that. And these things should be remembered, which characters appear in which plays. Now, the plot of the play is that it opens in Roussillon or Roussillon, a Catalan province of Spain, where a young Count, Bertram, bids farewell to his mother, the Countess, and Helena as he leaves for the court of Paris with old Lord Lafeu at the French king's order. Now, Bertram has to replace his father, who has recently died as king's ward and attendant. Helena is a low born woman and a ward of the countess whose father has recently died. And now she expresses unrequital love for Bertram. Now, Bertram, Paralys, and Lafeu arrive in Paris. In Roussillon, Helena confesses her love for Bertram in spite of social differences, and she tells it to the Countess. They all agree that Helena should travel to Paris to attempt to cure the king. Now, Bertram, along with the other lords, go in a Tuscan war, and Paralys remains with the king. Helena convinces the king that she can treat him by giving the logic that her father was a renowned doctor. A deal is made between the king and Helena that if the king dies, she will be put to death, but if he lives, she may choose a husband from the court. Now, the king is cured and he asks Helena to choose a husband from the court. She chooses Bertram, obviously, and the king seals her wish. So, Helena's skills came in handy. Now, Bertram is mocking, he balks it, and he is a very shocked, and he mocks even Helena because he asks the king that he should choose who he wants to marry. His own eyes should choose who he wants to marry. He scorns Helena's poverty and lack of good title. Now, the king offers money and title both to Helena and praises her. He says, like, I can resolve this issue. But Bertram, he refuses again. And the king threatens Bertram with ruin and his wrath. Now, on this, Bertram consents for the marriage. Bertram sends Helena to Roussillon and himself goes on war in Italy. In Italy, Bertram seduces local virgins because his art is not in the marriage. Now, Helena follows him to Italy and befriends Diana, a virgin with whom Bertram is infatuated. They both arrange this thing that she will take Diana's place in bed at night. Now, Diana obtains Bertram's ring in exchange for one of Helena's. They want to basically, how can I say, they just want to, exchange their places at night so that Bertram couldn't know that it's not Diana but Helena. And they actually succeed also. So Helena, without Bertram's knowledge, consummates their marriage and wears his ring because consummation of marriage was important in order for the marriage to become legal. So Helena had to do what she did. Helena returns to the Spanish countess, who is horrified at what her son has done and claims Helena as a child instead of Bertram's place. Helena fakes her death. Bertram, thinking that he's free from her, now comes home. Bertram wants to marry a local lord's daughter, but Diana shows up and breaks the engagement. Because right now, Bertram doesn't know that, it wasn't it wasn't Diana, but Helena who consummated, you know. So Diana comes up and she breaks the engagement. And Helena also appears and she explains the ring swap, announcing that she has fulfilled Bertram's challenge. Bertram, now he is impressed by all she has done to win him and swears his love to her. Thus, all ends well. LeFou accepts Paralus as a servant. The king offers Diana a dowry and a choice of a husband. One can understand why Bose said that it's a problem play because really there are a lot of problematic things in this play. Bertram's refusal to marry Helena, and Helena's constant, you know, nagging. It all makes sense now. So yeah, and I think that is why the name of the play is All's Well That Ends Well, because nothing really, nothing well is happening in the play. In the end, only the well thing has come into action. So maybe Shakespeare was aware of this problematic things in this play. One never knows. But yeah, now we come to another play, Measure for Measure, written in 1604. The first performance of this play occurred in 1604, so it is believed to be written in 1603 or 1604, and it is also regarded as a problem play. We will know why. The play's main themes include justice, morality, or mortality, mercy in Vienna, and the dichotomy between corruption and purity. Now, the main characters are Vincentio, the Duke. He appears disguised as Friar Lodovic. Angelo, the deputy who rules in the Duke's absence. Claudio, a young gentleman. Juliet, beloved of Claudio, pregnant with his child. Isabella, sister of Claudio. Mariana, betrothed to Angelo. Mistress Overdane, manager of a Viennese brothel. Pompey Bum, a pimp who acquires customers for Mistress Overdane. Harold Bloom described him as a triumph of Shakespeare's art, a vitalistic presence who refuses to be bound by any division between comedy and tragedy. So, yeah, Shakespeare had really different dimensional characters, I can say. Now, the plot of the play is that in Vienna there were illegal brothels, obviously STDs, and illegitimate children in number. You can imagine it, like, if you have seen the Game of Thrones, especially season 2, you will understand the condition here. Duke Vincentio was fed up with these sins and ways of his people, but at the same time, he did not want to be the bad guy by enforcing strict laws. Duke Vincentio wanted to appear very liberal or, very relaxed, but he was actually fed up. The Duke announces his heading out and names Angelo as in charge in his absence, hoping that Angelo will clean the streets of Vienna. Now, Claudio, a young gentleman of Vienna, is arrested by Angelo for this thing that, he Claudio actually made Juliet pregnant before marriage, and it was done with her consent, yet it's not a right thing to do. And Claudio is sentenced to death by Angelo to set an example to other Viennese citizens. Now, Juliet is actually Claudio's, betrothed, but still. And Isabella, sister of Claudio, a virtuous, religious, and chaste girl, when hears about her brother's sentence, she goes to Angelo to beg the life of her brother. Initially, Angelo refuses, but later he asks Isabella for a deal. He will let Claudio live if she agrees to have sexual intercourse with him. Isabella is shocked and immediately refuses. And now Isabella goes to Duke Vincentio, who is now disguised as Friar Lodovic, and he's roaming in the city of Vienna to inquire about Angelo's administration. Isabella and Lodovic make a plot according to which Isabella will agree to have, intercourse with Angelo, but in her place, Mariana will go. Mariana was once betrothed to Angelo, but she could not pay him the dowry because her brother's ship was wrecked in the sea. So that is why their marriage couldn't happen. Now one can understand why this is a problem play. Now, Isabella had asked to, you know, do this thing with Angelo in the dark, and obviously Mariana goes. After this act, Angelo did not stick to his promise of leaving Claudio, fearing revenge by him. So, Angelo is really a, how can I say, he's really a bastard. And it's as well that Isabella did not subject herself to such, how can I say, to such degradation. Angelo asks for the execution of Claudio and desires for the head of the dead Claudio. A villain, Bernardine, whom the Duke wished to execute. And now the Duke also wanted to send his head to Angelo in the place of Claudio's head, but Bernardine refused to be executed. Now, then a pirate named Ragazin, who is of similar appearance to Claudio and had recently died of fever, his head is cut and sent to Angelo. Isabella is told that her brother is executed. So, when the Duke returns to his court, Isabella and Mariana publicly petition him. They tell him all that had happened. So, this is what happens. When Duke asks Angelo about it, he denies. Now, Claudio is brought in front of Angelo and obviously he confesses his guilt. The Duke asks Angelo to be executed. I mean, the Duke asked his servants to execute Angelo. Obviously, he did not ask Angelo to be executed. But, Isabella takes pity on him and begs the Duke for Angelo's life. The Duke pardons Angelo as well as Claudio, and he himself proposes to Isabella. Isabella, when she's proposed, she is completely silent, either because she's so happy, or she's speechless, or she's horrified that another powerful man has proposed to her when she wanted to become nun. So that is something. A lot of things happen. So, yeah, I will stop here because I think it's more than enough. One can understand why this play is a problem play. Today, we mostly discussed the problem plays of Shakespeare, whether it be All's Well That Ends Well or Measure for Measure, and even what is The Merry Wives of Windsor. I mean, there are problematic elements to it, and it's important that we see these things and we contemplate about them and see how they have affected pop culture media and subsequently the viewers who consume the media influenced by these plays, because it helps us to understand ourselves, and I think that is the main motive of literature or plays that we are reading. It's just not about knowing which character did what to know about UGC net exam and clear it. It's more about the journey of understanding the characters and how they relate to your life, and how you can learn from them. You can reflect on their journey and subsequently your own journey, and make your life better and fill your head with better things, I suppose. So, yeah, that is why I suppose these things are important. And I hope you liked my video. Thank you for watching. If you liked it, please give it a like, subscribe to my channel, and I will meet you all in the next video. Thank you.